And welcome to the Social Justice Forums. And I'm your host, Daren, Jaime, and today we'll bring you a discussion that's forming a deeper understanding of the issues and inequities that many people face. We present multiple points of view and promote civic engagement. So stay tuned because the Social Justice Forum starts now. Welcome back. Well-being and equity in the world is an organization that's advancing intergenerational well-being and equity on a foundation of racial and economic justice. We're in a world that's convening for a community building conference, which is change makers will join virtual participants to take long-term action to advance intergenerational health, well-being, and equity. And joining me now to share more and discuss more is the founder of the Sanchez Center for Health Equity and Senior Fellow at Wellbeing and Equity in the World, Robert Sanchez. And Robert, good to have you.
Thank you for having me.
I'm glad to have you sharing up. Really, let's talk a little bit about this here, because when we talk about well-being and we talk about equity in the world, somebody may not be so familiar.
Well, I think what we all realize, especially communities of color, that there is inequity in a host of our lives, in most of our lives. And one of the ways we in the world are trying to combat that is by bringing different communities together in order to address some of these inequities. So we're creating a space where people who have lived experiences get together and we deepen our relationships and we talk about how we are going to approach these issues. And I think this is an important event, and it's something that we are looking forward to sharing and then moving forward. So this is a national movement.
Yeah. And when you talk about inequities, I mean, that's the topic of this show. We talk about inequities that so many people face. When you look at the inequities that are out there right now, what comes to the top of your list?
Well, the top of my list is something that I'm addressing is transplant transplant inequity for Black and Brown communities, and the inequities in the healthcare system that we have to interact with. So, for example, research has shown that people of color in the United States are more likely to experience poor health outcomes than their white counterparts, even when controlling for factors such as income and education. I think some of these things are not only important to look into, but are an example of some of the issues that we have to address.
When we talk about healthcare, obviously, and the inequities in the healthcare system and just health overall, we have to admit that after COVID, things were further exacerbated. Give me your assessment on that, and what did you see on your end that really highlighted the inequities for you for COVID?
So, what highlighted the inequities for COVID for me was on a personal side. I was getting tested for a transplant, and everything got shut down, and because of COVID, and I saw what the national dialogue was turning into, and it really didn't help how we approach COVID. I think it's something that hurt us. As I was doing dialysis, I personally saw people who were there one day and not there the other day, and the answer for their absence was always, oh, they caught COVID and passed away. I think it's something that highlighted some of the battles that we have in front of us. A lot of these individuals were poor people of color who did not get the same medical attention that they should have gotten. And I was hyper aware of some of these things, especially while I was on dialysis waiting for kidney transplant.
So for yourself, as we talk about going forward and dealing with these inequities, I know that you got conferences planned up. So let's talk a little
Yeah.
bit about what we got coming up in the future that you really want to be able to have these matters addressed.
So we have the spring 2023 Win Week, which is there's going to be people, communities of color from all over the country. We're going to get together and we're going to talk about some of these issues. We created this network of projects and activities, and it's a chance to showcase our collective approach and our programs and help our partners address some of their issues. So it's kind of like, all right, are you addressing this? How can I help you in addressing this issue when it comes to inequity? We're talking about how we approach the prison industry. We talking about how we approach the healthcare industry, how we approach other areas of inequity that affect all our lives. So I'm looking forward to that and speaking to individuals like myself trying to make a change.
When we talk about that change, obviously, you want people to hear what you're saying, deal with the inequities. What's your take on it? Because when we talk about the inequities, so many times there are these resistors to understanding
Yeah.
what they are. Some are due to ignorance, others are just out, flat out intolerance. They don't want to tolerate a conversation with this at all. What's
Right.
what you said right, like too quick, like you have history.
Yeah. Yeah, I have a really long history with inequity in my life. Um, from at 18 years old, I was incarcerated for 15 years under the Rockefeller drug laws for my mere presence in an apartment. No guns, no drugs, no one said, "Hey, this guy's selling drugs." Just my mere presence in an apartment. 15 years for a person who's never been incarcerated before, who's never um, who's never committed a crime. Um, Poverty when I was younger, and looking back now as a person who has worked in social work and has done over 20 years as a therapist and as a clinical social worker, to how we interact with the medical system. And I think in today's time where there's especially languages and intolerance for people who who think differently, who want to um, address some of these issues, and there's forces that stop those issues from being addressed. I think it's really, really important for us to get together as a community. I think one of the issues we face is that we approach inequity separately, and I think what WIN does for us as a whole, it allows us to all come together and say, we're going to approach this together. And I think, especially in today's time where the social dialogue has been co-opted and it's been difficult to state truths and to deal with that. I think this is a great way for us to all get together and say, okay, you know what, we're going to take back this narrative and we're going to have our own narrative. We're going to be able to tell you what affects us as Black and brown people.
When we look at the narrative, obviously the narrative gets shifted by who tells the story. Many times we
Right.
find that the story is not being told that's reflective of what's going on. Give me some tips, if you will, some ways that we can look at, some ways that we can really get to breaking down some of those things, because part of that conference is really dealing with how do we take the right appropriate action and take the right proper steps, so that way we can have this civic engagement to create change.
I think I, I think actually we cannot be afraid to tell our stories. I think people connect through stories, and we have to we have to take back our stories, and we have to tell our own stories and not allow someone else to tell our stories. I think that's the one thing that connects us all. And if we have a connected approach to taking back our narrative and being able to say, no, this is not the way it's supposed to go. This is the way it's supposed to go. I think we will make great progress. I myself at the Sanchez Center for Health Equity, I'm addressing a crisis that affects many Black and brown people, um, that we don't know about. Uh, we, even though there's 31% of us in the United States, we represent over 66% of the people waiting for an organ donation, a kidney. Uh, we tend to die quicker, on waiting on the waiting list than our Caucasian brothers and sisters.
Is there a
How do we
reason? Is there a
fix
reason
that?
why? I don't want to cut you off, but I had to just jump in and ask the question, because when we see these numbers and statistics like that, what can we glean from this, other than the fact that, yes, we do know that there's a disparity, but what are some of the other things that maybe the general public may be missing?
So one of them is that we have to redefine what our relationship with the healthcare system looks like. We have to, and by doing this, there's two things that go here. We have a long history where the health system has failed us, big time, and we can go through it, right? Tuskegee, the women in Puerto Rico with, um, you know, the pill, um, and those stories get passed down through generations and generations. And we have to, a, not be afraid to deal with some of these systems and gain our trust back. But two, we cannot be afraid to tell the health system, you need to pay not only better attention to me, but you have to give me better quality, health care. Um, and I'm hoping that as a group, that we are able to approach the healthcare system and say, this is what we need, and this is what, first of all, identify what's happening to us, and then say, this is what we need, and can you help us achieve that? Um, we have no choice but to deal with the healthcare system. So rather than running away from it, we need to approach it and challenge it and demand that we get better services.
Yeah. So for the public right now who wants to participate, we talk about civic engagement here on the show, getting the people to become more involved. Where can they go? What can they do to find out more information and connect with you and your cause?
So right now, you can go to the We in the World, website, and I work with We in the World, with Chromatic Black. They have been very instrumental in helping not only us get organized, but uh, to be able to tell our stories and to say, um, we demand that we have, a better approach to the healthcare system. So um, I can be reached through We in the World, and we can take it from there.
All right. Well, certainly I want to thank you for taking the opportunity to talk with us. I mean, I think there's a lot that we can deal with when it comes to the issue of inequities, and really raising our voice and raising the issues are really the most important. And when we talk about
I
the healthcare system, it's huge.
I also want to thank you for taking this on, and I think you're helping tremendously by telling these stories and giving us the avenue to not only express our concerns, but to say, hey, this is what's going on, to let the community know this is what's going on, how can we have a concerted effort towards changing some of these things? I think a lot of us don't realize um, that we can challenge the system to do better, um, and that we can say, hey, let's all have this national approach to making our experience a better experience, a healthier experience.
Yeah, Robert, I thank you. I think, that's our job. We have to raise awareness and we have to continue to raise our voice and put these issues out there at the forefront. And thankfully, we have a platform such as the Social Justice Show to be able to talk about this. And that's what we want to talk about, the inequities. And you highlight them very well. And I know you got your conference coming up Thursday, April 27th, for those who want to know. April 27th from 9 to 12, Changing the System Together. You can go ahead and be a part of the discussion. And also you can be a part of the action if you come on the 27th, 9 to 12 p.m. Robert Sanchez, thank you so much. We got to leave it there, brother, but good to have you with us.
Thanks a lot, brother.
All right. Taking a quick break. We have more show after this.
¿Qué color? Perfecto, mijo.
Gracias. Thank you.
What's wrong, mijo?
Donating to a pet's medical care is one of the many ways you can help families in your community. Pets and people belong together. Learn more at petsandpeopletogether.org.
Every day, thousands of kids start vaping. And I can't let this happen to my kid. Of course, it's awkward to talk to your kids about the dangers of vaping. Hey, bestie, how's sketches? Ready? It's hard to get their attention. Ready? Go. Yes, look at that. You even turn yours over. So if you want to talk to your kids about the dangers of vaping, you have to get it trending. Right, Backpack Kid?
Let's do it.
First, invite your kid to do the vape talk. Let's try this. All right.
Why is he here?
Yeah, I gotta get it trending, honey.
Come on.
To the left. To the right. Let's go.
Oh, honey, can we talk?
Yeah, what's up?
I see a lot of your friends vaping.
Visit talkaboutvaping.org for tips on when and how to have the vape talk.
Feel the beat of nature at a park or forest near you. Find a forest and music inspired by nature at discovertheforest.org.
How do you know when you've made the right decision? It's the feeling you get in your gut. The one that tells you what's right or wrong. It's the one that says, sure, I can have a drink. Or the feeling that says, okay, I've been drinking. Now what? It's the voice inside you that says, I'm buzzed. Better leave the car when it's time to go. Plan ahead. Catch a sober ride. Buzz driving is drunk driving.
Even though we didn't grow up together, he's my favorite brother.
Hey, sis.
I'm the baby of the family, and he's the gentle giant.
What you know about Port Georgia?
Man, please, that's a classic.
You know when they say people are a rare breed? Yeah, he's that.
I'm sorry, I'll be back in a few hours.
Don't worry, Shug, you know I'm for you.
I know.
Go get the football.
That was my favorite memory. He was always for ya. This is a true story of me, Bridget Floyd, and this guy, George Perry Floyd Jr., my big brother.
And welcome back. The organization Minority Millennials has been committed to bridging the gap between policy culture and helping hundreds of Black, brown youth access jobs, build wealth, as well as become civically engaged. Now, they aim to become the nation's leading resource for emerging generations of color as they seek equity in social, political, and economic developments. We've got joining us the founder and president of Minority Millennials, Dan Lloyd. And Dan, good to have you with us. And when you talk about bridging the gap, I mean, it's definitely something that's necessary, needed. When we look at young millennials of color, for many, it's an uphill battle.
Yeah, without a doubt. And I think, part of our mission and why we started this was really to kind of better define and clarify what civic engagement means, what policy means, and really how we like to kind of storytell it is talk about it in reference to power, how power works, and how that a lot of young people in general say that they're not interested or they don't care about politics. But quite frankly, if you ask them, how would you feel if someone took something from you or made you do something that you did not want to do? Would that impact your life or your family and community? And a lot of times when you're not involved in the political process, you are actually being forced to do something that you don't want to do. So that's how we kind of streamline and storytell why it's very important to be civically engaged.
And so for yourself, obviously you're the president and founder, and you found this with a purpose and a mission. And give us a little bit more of the background into the mission, because when you look at the millennial population, it's a population that really is at the cusp of, doing some great things, and you're really catching people at a great time of life, I should say.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, we're unique. I'm 36, so I'm a little bit of an older millennial. Millennials are getting older. Millennials are now 41. So to give some context, if you're 26 to 41 years old, you're a millennial. And if you're 12 to 23, you're considered a Gen Z. So we actually kind of now cater to millennials and Gen Z. But if you're like me, born in the late 80s, you kind of have a little bit of that old school education where it was before the iPhone, but then you also were blessed with technology. And the next generation, Gen Z, was really kind of born in that iPhone era since 2007. So we have the unique ability, more than any other generation in human history, to connect with people from all backgrounds and from all races and really from across the globe, and at the same time have the most access to information. So we're really trying to empower Black and brown millennials and Gen Z. We can give them a lot more information than they've had in the past. On the flip side, it's also extremely hard for our generation to focus. And so we have to make sure that when we're talking about these issues, they're very clear and they're presented in a way that our demographic can easily understand and then take it and make action with it. So that's a huge component to making sure that there's success with engaging millennials.
And when you tell me about millennials, you talk about the work that they got going on in the community and how they're trying to really transcend and make it, make an impact here in the United States and America and beyond. You think about the fact that this is a very powerful group. It's a very powerful generation. When you talk about the contributions and the things that are going on in the lives of millennials right now, I mean, these are the people that you see sometimes presidents, CEOs of companies, really influencers. You're looking at the generation of people who really are making a lot of decisions for the way that we're going as a country right now, too. When you look at politics, you see mostly millennials that are out there in government office. So I want to just have a moment, because when we talk about this culture, and having millennials actually take their rightful place in the culture, I know that that's a part of what you're doing, right? Is assisting them to say, listen, you have a place in the culture, but not just having a place, having a voice, and securing that voice.
Yeah, absolutely. And millennials and Gen Z, quite frankly, combined are now the largest workforce demographic in the nation. We are also now the largest voting base in the nation. So when you combine political involvement and potential workforce capital, we have a lot of leverage. And so it's really just educating our demographic and our generation on how to utilize that leverage. Are we going to do it for the better good, as our parents and grandparents advocated for? Are we going to make sure that there's intergenerational wisdom being passed down? We don't need to recreate the wheel. We can utilize technology to make sure that we're advancing our racial equity causes, so that for the sake of time, things are actually getting done and there's proof of progress being made. And also that we are really defining what culture means. So we like to bridge that gap when we say that we're talking about our influence and the need for equity in entertainment, our influence and the need for equity in entrepreneurship. And are we really becoming owners and having ownership in industries that we've made global? When you talk about entertainment and hip hop, it's the number one music genre in the world. So is now millennials, are we making sure that they're the CEOs and owners of these record labels and the new ones that are coming up? And the same thing when it comes to companies. Are we the CEOs and the ones that are making decisions as to who sits at the table of the board? We recently just saw that with Kanye and Adidas, and I'm hoping that there were some equity conversations in that transaction.
Yeah, when we talk about, we could go a whole show on Kanye right there. I mean, that's a show all by itself. But one of the things that we can does not, that can be said is that the Kanye deal and the Kanye coming back, it's all based on money. Let's just keep it for what it is. It's all based on money. And one thing that you do, I know that the work goes on because it's about wealth, right? Because I think when you talk about millennials, these are people who are trying to make money, making decent money, and some doing pretty good. When you talk about New York City, it's not hard sometimes to get a six-figure income because it almost requires six figures just to live here. But having six figures means nothing if you can't acquire wealth. And so talk to me about your building wealth strategy and what are you doing with minority millennials to really educate them in this area?
Yeah, when we talk about income, as you mentioned, like income is great for maintaining and getting by, but wealth is something that really gives you the convenience of a quality of life. Building wealth gives you the freedom to really pursue your dreams rather than just working, regardless if you're making six figures. So, as an organization on Long Island specifically, we've been doing a lot of work when it comes to procurement and making sure that not only are our businesses in our network, in our community, certified to work on a lot of the construction and the industries that are coming to this region, like offshore wind, cannabis. We just partnered with Sands New York. They're a multi-billion-dollar resort company, and they literally partnered with us, a small nonprofit, to do pipeline development with diverse talent and NWBEs. We have a procurement academy tonight, actually, March 1st. So when we talk about generational wealth, are our millennial-led companies getting multi-figure contracts to do steel pipeline? Are they getting contracts to do construction and trade? Are they getting contracts to do the engineering of these projects on Long Island? And that's really where you build generational wealth, because if you look at historically, these are contracts that go through each generation of a family. They've been going on for 50, 60, 80 to 100 years. And we want to position our companies and our demographic to now be able to take a chunk of that equity in these industries. And then lastly, we'll talk quickly about financial literacy. As Earn Your Leisure and a lot of these new platforms have been doing very well, explaining how to leverage the stock market and also how to build wealth through home ownership and property ownership.
Yeah, you talk about Earn Your Leisure. I know everybody's not so familiar, but these are some guys who are really doing a great job of educating when it comes to wealth and wealth building and how to really navigate financially. When you talk about millennials, I know a lot of people who are actually linked to Earn Your Leisure, and they seem to be doing a great job in learning and becoming more educated. I want to get your take on this. You're recognized as one of the city and state's top 40 under 40. What's it like for you being able to have this honor?
Oh, it's a blessing. I've been blessed. I would say I've been privileged to come from a family that was really trying to educate me on a lot of these things. It just took me 30 years to figure it out. So when I did, I was able to really kind of evolve and align with what my father and my mother were trying to instill into me. And also I've been blessed with a huge mentor network, and I have a great colleague network. So really just being able to inject our mission as an organization into a region that is hungry. And honestly, though, after the summer of 2020, there was a lot of commitments to racial equity from major banking institutions to law enforcement. And as a demographic, we have to make sure that they're accountable to those things. And I make sure personally and professionally that we are accountable to those commitments and benefiting from those commitments, quite frankly. So it's been a blessing. It's been a journey. It's not easy as a social entrepreneur. That's what I like to define myself as. But it's been exciting if you can really merge the culture and the policy component and do it well, there's a lot of exciting things, and I'm sure we'll talk about the summit we have coming up, because Earn Your Leisure is actually guest speakers at a summit.
Yeah, I want to talk about the summit, and I'll give you a chance to talk about it. But let me start with this question, then we'll come back and talk about that. Economic development is so huge, right? And so many times people who are of brown descent are left out of that conversation and not even getting a seat at the table, but forget the seat at the table, just being excluded, period. Talk to me about what you want, what your goal is, how you're dealing with economic development and how you see things, and then we can talk about the conference.
Yeah, economic development is completely tied together with generational wealth. Because when you talk about economic development on a policy level, it's really understanding when someone like Governor Hochul makes an announcement on RFA. It could be an RFA, a request for proposal on a major project, but then you need 3 years of business credit or business experience to even submit for that proposal. So economic development is really educating our community about, if you do not have that and you're not certified to do business in the state of New York, then you need to network and partner with somebody that is and is looking to possibly have a subcontractor. And that's where we come in and help nurture and develop the businesses to make sure that they're a part of that economic opportunity. But also just tapping into resources that a lot of people just don't have the capacity or the bandwidth, because they're working day to day, to really step outside of their mental box for 15 and 20 minutes and take a look and see how can this benefit their entrepreneurial dreams, or even if they have an existing property. So economic development is completely tied into policy. Is really just helping to educate the person or the individual on what that looks like. And we like to focus on capital and business contracts on the state. So I serve on the Long Island Regional Economic Development Council. So I've been privileged to have access to a lot of developments that are coming down to this region. And then I can then share that with our community and our demographic, and also, more importantly, make sure they're prepared to take advantage of these RFPs before they come out.
Hey, while we're talking, let's get right to the conference and the summit. We want to get into that.
Yeah, we are the future. That's the name of the summit. It's called We Are the Future. But quite frankly, as you already mentioned, millennials, we are now. We are literally at the helms of leadership. We have the ability to make decisions that our parents and grandparents were not able to make. So we have a lot of responsibility, and that's what this conference is focused on. We're partnering with city and state, actually, to provide a conference that bridges the gap between policy and culture. We have Senator Jamal Bailey, who I know is from the Bronx, as well as Councilman Kevin Riley, Councilwoman Natasha Williams, Senator Jessica Ramos. We have New York City Public Advocate Jamani Williams. We have Senator Kevin Thomas, Assemblywoman Taylor Darling. So we really, really wanted to get some of our Black and brown leadership on the state, city, and local level and connect them with our high school students, connect them with the young professionals across the region. And each panel is going to talk about the future of power, quite frankly, the future of workforce, the future of economic development. And then we also have that live chat with Earn Your Leisure that we're going to really be able to talk and sit with them and talk about their journey and where they see our industry and our culture going when it comes to economic development. We do have a meet and greet with them. It's going to be a career fair as well. So we have a lot of offshore wind developers, a lot of cannabis-focused industries, a lot of advanced manufacturing industries that are going to be on hand, actively recruiting at the summit. So We Are the Future, April 27th, live at David S. Mack Complex and Arena at Hofstra University.
Got to be pretty exciting for you. And I know a labor of love, but at the same time, also a lot goes into putting something like this together.
Yeah, well, listen, I'm not bald for no reason, and I'm trying to make sure that I stay a little bit looks like I'm in my 30s. But I've been blessed to have a great team. We have an incredible team. City and State is a great partner. Shout out to Lisa and the entire staff. So, we're excited. We had a call today. It's coming together well. So we're blessed. We're looking forward to it.
Yeah. Before we go, I want to just get your take on this here, right? Millennials are sometimes misunderstood. Sometimes people don't understand who they are, what they're about. Yeah. What's the biggest misconception that you can break down real time for us when it comes to our millennial culture?
I would say one is that we're highly educated. Our demographic was coached to go to higher education. And I'm speaking specifically about Black and brown millennials. We went to HBCUs. We got our bachelor's degrees. We have our master's degrees. Some even have our PhDs. So we're extremely educated. We're also very much purpose driven. So not only are we getting the educational necessary requirements to do what we want to do, but we also are following our passions, our purpose. So we're not just doing this to make money, we're doing this to have an impact. So social purpose is big for our demographic. We're not lazy. And quite frankly, we make more money than our parents and grandparents. It's just that the cost of living and inflation has made the quality of life that the American dream is supposed to provide a lot harder to attain. But we're putting a lot of responsibility on our backs. You know, we're creating this economy. We're also educating and mentoring the Gen Z population. So we're in a unique situation to blend the traditional American society with the advanced technology American society that we're going into.
Well, Dan, I want to thank you so much for being with us, and I mean, best wishes with all that goes on for the conference and the summit. We know it's going to be an awesome time. But I want to thank you for taking the time to spend with us, because I think it's really important that we understand and try to break down some of these real-time issues that millennials and particularly millennials of Black and brown descent are dealing with. But you're doing a great job of bridging the gap, doing a great job of really providing an outlet where people can go. And if not, you wouldn't be recognized the way that you're recognized. But thank you so much for what you do, man. And hopefully we'll get you back soon and we can talk more about this.
Love it. Thank you for the opportunity. Thank you for the platform. I really appreciate that. And hopefully you could attend the summit. We got to follow up. It'll be good.
Hey, man, love to. So get me in and I'm there. If you if I get a seat, I'll get in.
All right, copy. Got you.
All right, then. Dear Lord, our guest.
Right.
Listen, got to take a quick break. We'll be right back. Coming up after this.
I'm an ex-drug dealer, and I'll be your sub today. Can you see anything different as a pill?
No.
You don't know?
Fentanyl is being mixed into everything now. There's only one thing that will save somebody's life. That is naloxone nasal spray.
Fentanyl, it's cheap, it's potent, and it's profitable.
Why would drug dealers put a lethal dose of fentanyl in drugs if they know it's so harmful?
Really just all about the money.
I just didn't realize that one pill could change your whole life.
More kids should know.
Is it time yet?
It's time.
Let's start time for dinner.
Oh, terrific.
Pasta dinner.
Donating pet food is one of the many ways you can help families in your community. Pets and people belong together. Learn more at petsandpeopletogether.org.
I don't know why you're so sad. You've got a roof over your head.
Bro, you gotta stop with that depression stuff. That's a white people thing.
Escúchame, en esta casa los hombres no lloran.
You all right?
It just feels like it's coming from everywhere.
Do you want to talk about it?
Thanks for hearing me out, bro. Appreciate it.
You can talk to me if you're feeling sad. Whenever you need to talk, I'm here, okay?
Man, it's lonely. Like, going through life lonely.
There is the therapeutic aspect of music, just expressing how you feel. I'm going to talk to Howie about his feelings, make it into a song.
Most hiring algorithms would scream me out.
Some bosses couldn't see me as a leader.
I've run this place for 20 years, but I still need to prove that I'm more than what you see on paper.
I've been running code as long as I've been able to reach a keyboard.
This is what I do. It's second nature for me, coordinating 100 details at once.
It's the way my mind works. I have a very mechanical brain.
I sold them on my skills.
You gotta be so good they can't ignore you.
My magic is
analytics and empathy. That's how I'm getting clients. You have to have the confidence in yourself to show up and defy the odds.
I am more than who I am on paper.
I never got a college degree. And today, I'm the CEO of my own company. People want to tell me I'm one in a million, when actually I'm one of millions. Stars are all around us. It's time for them to shine.
Amnesty International is a global movement that's demanding human rights for all people, no matter who they are or where they are. Gun-related violence threatens our most fundamental human right to life, and the organization now campaigns for governments to use common sense gun reform to stop gun violence and protect people's right to life. Joining us to discuss more is Amnesty International's USA Director of the Gun Violence Prevention, Ernest Coverson. And Ernest, thank you so much for being with us.
Oh, thank you. Thank you.
Well, I'll start off with the obvious, that as we look around, we continue to see gun violence continue to rise, and the stories continue to be more harrowing. We see whether it's a mass shooting at a school, whether it's a young person that goes on the wrong doorstep, or whether it's just a random everyday act of violence, we're seeing more and more people lose their life to gun violence. As a person who's got there on the battlefield, give me your perspective on where do you see things right now?
Right now, gun violence is consistently, since the pandemic, consistently been on the rise. We have seen the rise of gun sales, the rise of gun ammunition sales being up, and the rise of mass shootings, as you stated. And so what's unfortunate is that we cannot get legislators to put common sense legislation on the books, even though many Americans overwhelmingly are in support of some of the common sense of background checks, of banning assault weapons, etc. But the elected officials that are there to represent these individuals are not representing them when it comes to the laws that they're passing. You know, we have consistently seen the usage of these military-style weapons in these shootings that are taken place. And then we see as well these laws in states. You know, many times we look at federal conversations, but individual states is where the rubber is hitting the road. You just had Governor DeSantis sign a piece of legislation in Florida that will provide permitless carry concealed weapons in the state of Florida, meaning an individual can purchase a weapon without a license and carry it without anyone knowing. And that's taking place in states across the country. And so, as you know, many eyes are on the federal government. Our state governments are doing some ridiculous things that are allowing guns to continue to fill our communities and bring harm to individuals.
You know, you touched on it because I think so many people have it wrong that when we talk about government, we talk about the federal government, and there is a requirement and there is things that the federal government can be doing. But most of the time we talk about what's happening, we have to take a look at state laws, because state laws are really the difference makers. Right. New York State, we know, has some real stringent laws. We're considered to be one of the more stringent ones when it comes to having laws against gun violence. Recently, we had the whole Glock gun and the ghost gun legislation. But when you talk about looking across the state or states, we got some work to do. Give me more of how you're interacting in terms of education, awareness, and even advocacy in this area, because as we said, it is a national problem, but if it's really going to be conquered, I, I honestly believe you gotta go at the state level first.
Yeah, no, you're exactly right. People look at the federal government as the answer many times, but not only in the gun work, but in everything, the state is, those local laws is what's affecting us on our day-to-day lives, right? And so, you know, we have as Amnesty, working with coalitions across states, are looking to either support legislation, as we were able to do this year in Michigan, that passed legislation, background checks, safe storage, and still working on ERPO or red flag laws in Michigan. And coalition organizations on the ground work to stop legislation, like in a Florida. I mean, unfortunately, we were not able to, in a Georgia and others that are allowing, these states, and we don't want to look at Amnesty as a nonpartisan organization, but you have to look at the reality. Many of these state legislatures are run by or controlled by Republicans, and so once they're in office, they move the legislation that they want to move, and this many times in support of firearms, and allowing more people access to firearms. And so we as an organization and coalitions in these states need the people in these states to stand up and push back. Like you say, we do educating, we work with organizations, we work with groups, we work with what we call our heroes, that are on the ground doing this work day to day. Even through COVID life, they were still going to hospitals, they were still intervening in community altercations, etc. But we have to push the legislation to be there to help stop the permission of these guns to be there. And lastly on that, like in Illinois, I live in outside of Chicago, and just like New York, Chicago or the state of Illinois has strong and strict gun laws. But you have a state next to us, Indiana, that has laxed gun laws. And so guns are permitted to cross state lines, etc. And so we have to deal with the state by state work so that everyone can be safe from this human rights crisis that we know is gun violence.
You talk about Chicago, and everybody knows that Chicago has definitely been stereotyped, and rightfully so in some ways because of what goes on. We know that there's a lot of things that happen, but let me ask the question, because the question always comes back to the sentiments of the community, because if you're ever really going to have any state change, it requires people going to a ballot box or people showing up in protest and people really making their voice heard. In a place like right there by Chicago. Talk to me about, the voice of the people. How big is the voice of the people on particular issues like this? Because if you look, people will make the assumption that because this keeps happening, that nobody's really doing anything or saying anything, when the reality is that's just not the case.
Correct. It totally is not the case. You have, from young people, there's a group I work with, two groups I work with, one Good Kids Mad City, as well as Brave Youth Leaders, that are young people that are on the ground in their communities doing activities, educating, walking the streets, protesting, and then also getting involved in the political process as well to stop guns. But right, they don't get that top of the fold 6 o'clock news coverage that that the shooting gets. And so there are individuals in communities in Chicago and across the country that are doing the work every day, pushing to get this work done. And as you were stating, there's layers to gun violence, and especially in our communities. In Black and brown communities, there's layers to this. It's not just the point that there's the gun, which is number one, but there's also an issue of the education or the challenge in education. There's the issue with the challenge of job or employment opportunities. There's the challenge of food deserts. And so all of those pieces lead to the end result, which is the gun violence. And so we have to also get out of the silos. And if I'm working on gun violence, I need to talk and work with the folks that's working on educational issues. If I'm working on gun violence, I need to work and talk with the people that's working on environmental justice issues, that got lead in the water, that's now impairing the individuals that's 7, 18 years old, that's drinking the water. It's impairing their mental growth. And so now they end up turning to a gun situation. And so we have to break those silos down and work, because unless we deal with all of those pieces of the puzzle in our communities, we're going to continue to have this gun violence issue. And so we have to deal with all of those at the same time that we push our legislators to pass legislation, don't allow these states to do this ridiculous stuff at the same time.
I want to get your take. I mean, you can go to Walmart right now, and in certain parts of the country, and be able, he knows where I'm going. You can go to Walmart right now and really walk out of there with a gun and ammunition. And, somebody will say, well, that's really, that's what it should be. It's the right. It's the right. But what about a Walmart? We can have some restrictions, and what can be done to really deal and curb with this, because we remember there was somebody who shot to death in Walmart a couple of times,
Right. Yeah.
And so right there, carrying the firearm. So when I think about Walmart, I think about other places where there's like easy access and things of that nature. I think about what can be done by the everyday public right now to really deal with this, because nobody wants to deal with it until it comes to their door.
Yeah, and that's the unfortunate piece. And not only gun violence, that happens with a lot of pieces, a lot of public issues. Folks really don't look at it until it comes to their door. And so we need folks to really look at this, because, I would, guesstimate, there's a number of people, somehow gun violence has affected you and or your family and or friends. And so you have some skin in the game at that point. But though, those institutions, you spoke of Walmart, and other sporting places, and even gun shows. But these establishments that are in our communities that's selling guns, we as the consumer have to say, we don't want you selling these in our community. We have to step up and say, because after one of the school shootings, unfortunately, there's been so many, I can't remember which one, one of the mass shootings, I think it was the Vegas shooting, if I'm not mistaken. Walmart, some of the Walmarts did stop selling guns at their locations, at their stores. Some still did. I believe, many in the South still do. But some of the other locations did stop selling firearms in their stores. So they have the ability to stop and still flourish. But we have to demand what we want in our community, or what we're not going to allow in our communities when it comes to these retail shops, et cetera. And so we have to, take the stance. This is not a sprint. This is a marathon. Many times you see the uproar, the excitement, quote unquote, when there is a shooting. And then 2 weeks later, after the funeral, after the balloons have been released, many folks go back to their daily lives, and until something else happens. But we have to consistently be in this fight to change what's happening right now.
Yeah, I think when we talk about this fight, it's a fight that's going to continue for a long, long time, and very many ways. Excuse me, tongue-tied here today. Very many ways, an uphill battle, simply because of I think a lack of complacency, or a strong sense of complacency on the part of elected officials in Washington, D.C. But I think also, when we talk about laws in the state, there is some need for reform, of course, but I don't think that people want to even have this kind of reform, because I don't think, in some senses, people don't get a sense of how bad it is. And when I say that, I say that from the perspective that, I've got some friends that are across the Atlantic Ocean, and they look at America and they look at what's going on in our cities and our countries, and they're saying, what is going on in your USA? What is going on here in America? Because some of the stuff we would never ever have here. But in the United States, we've allowed the law of the land to dictate that it's okay to have another mass shooting and we not be traumatized by it.
Right, yeah. And no, you're right. And I too as well, with working with the Amnesty International, especially after a mass shooting, I get the calls from, colleagues over there and even media, asking, what's going on, trying to understand our infatuation as a country with firearms, and what can they do? How can they support? How can they push back? Would it be beneficial if they and citizens of their countries, you know, write in, call in, and be active and help trying to save, quote unquote, us as a country with this infatuation with our firearms. And I have to say, Amnesty International is not against the Second Amendment, right? We're not saying to remove the Second Amendment. It is the law of the land, but at the same time, we have to just have common sense legislation with that. And you would think that, even just as most recently, the 3 9-year-olds that were shot and killed in Nashville, that immediately our elected officials would look to see how to secure and save and keep young people safe at that point. But it didn't happen. Many are saying we need more guns. Teachers need to have guns now. There's been some laws that passed over the past 3 to 5 years to allow firearms on campuses and allow students to carry firearms on campus. And we all know on a college campus at 18 to 20 years old, 21 years old, what we were doing. And how things happen on the campus. Now you're going to allow a student to carry a firearm as well on a campus. You're going to give a 5th grade teacher a Glock 9mm along with an Apple when she come to class. So, instead of how do we reduce guns, many of the gun advocates was looking to say we need to increase individuals that have guns and have access to guns, which in my opinion is totally backwards. At the same time.
Yeah. Before we wrap up, I just want to get a chance to get our viewers a little bit more acquainted with how they can get in touch with you guys and the work that you're doing.
Yeah. So you can check us out at our website, amnestyusa.org. You can go to the End Gun Violence page, get in contact with me. We have members across the country that are working on gun violence prevention work. Many state legislatures are getting ready to wrap up, but we still have time to do that. So please check us out, amnestyusa.org. And Ernest Coverson. I am the director of our gun violence prevention work and would love to work with any and everybody.
Well, Ernest, I want to let you know it's been great having you here. I think the conversation, we got to bring you back. And I pray that things get better. It's a shame that every time we turn on TV, and we are that. We are TV ourselves. We're media. But we are far too often broadcasting the tragedies of young lives, of innocent lives, just at the hands of gun violence, and it's left in the hands of actually legislators. When I have to tell people, no, it's really in the hands of the people. If we really do a better job, our legislators will do a better job. But that's another show for another day.
Sir.
But thank you, my brother, for being with us. This is my 30-second soapbox, but now I appreciate having you, and certainly we'll have you back again.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
All righty. Well, I wanted to let you know we come to the end of the show today. I hope that you actually enjoyed this week's discussion on the Bronx social justice and anti-violence forums. Now, if you're rewatching, yes, you can catch the Recablecast right here on BronxNet TV or BronxNet.org. If you want to join in on the conversation, present your point of view, well, you can visit our social media pages at BronxNet TV. Join us next week. We'll continue to elevate the discussion and bring further awareness across the globe. I'm your host, Daren Jaime. Take care, and God bless.